Hey everybody, this is Gabe with Rocket Shipping, and we're coming at you today with another episode of In the Weeds Wednesday. And the topic of the day is billing variances, why they happen, if you know that they're happening, in ways that you can put procedures into place for that, and also how to mitigate your risk against them. I'm actually going to put out a longer form video on the exact framework to mitigate your risk against billing variances in our YouTube channel. But today I'm going to focus on why they're happening and what the carriers are doing to make that happen. First part, do you even know that you're getting billing variances? Do you have a person at your company, if you're going direct with a carrier, that's auditing invoices? So are you saying, here's the quote, here's the invoiced amount, and why was there discrepancy? Or are you working with a third party and you're getting billed and then catching that and auditing it? The best way to do it, quick framework, would be you're working with a third party like Rocket Shipping. Every time that we get an invoice from a carrier that doesn't match quote, we hold the invoice, we inform our customer of what's happening, and then we dispute it and resolve it before we bill the customer. That's an ideal world. That's not the market standard. So today I'm going to break down why billing variances are happening. From the carrier side, they treat billing variances as a profit center. No secret, everybody knows that. So it's your job as a shipper, it's our job as a third party to fight against that, dispute them, and mitigate our risks against them. To break it down, the two most common billing variances that I'm going to talk about today are reweighs and reclasses. So I'm going to drop some knowledge on you guys about reweighs and reclasses that I don't think everybody looks at it from this lens. Basically, a reweigh obviously is saying, hey, you weighed it on your scale, maybe took pictures, you measured it, you weighed it. The carrier uses their dimensionalizer at their terminal and says, hey, this was a different weight. Here's a certificate showing it was a different weight, whether that was from a forklift or from the floor scale. If it's a reweigh and it's by 100 pounds, you're going to end up paying for an extra 100 pounds. And you can fight that in the YouTube video. I'll go through how you can mitigate that. Then there's a reclass. They're going to use their dimensionalizer and they're going to say that you were off by a few inches here or a few inches there, or it's hanging over the pallet here or there. Reclasses are pretty spendy because typically if you're shipping at class 125 and you got a 4x4 pallet and it goes to, and they remeasure it and say it's 56 inches instead of 48, that drops your density rating and it moves you up a class. 125 to 175, if you've got a pretty heavy pallet or it's traveling a long distance, that's hundreds of dollars. And the carriers know that, and that's why they have dimensionalizers, to profit off of your mistakes on measurements. However, one way that most shippers and most clients of ours had not thought of that we brought to them was, let's say you get a reweigh of 100 pounds and you got to pay that difference. A lot of times what we end up doing at Rocket Shipping is going back to the carrier and saying, hey, we'll accept the reweigh. That was maybe that was an error, or maybe our scale's off, but we're going to ask for the reclass now because that actually increased the density of the shipment because you didn't change the dimensions, you just increased the weight. So instead of class 125, we wanted at class 92.5. That's actually going to be a positive variance. A lot of times it saves you money versus having to pay for the reweigh. Take that tactical tip and make sure that your carrier, if you're going direct, or your third party, is at least taking that step on every single reweigh. You should be looking to see if it would be a different freight class in your favor. Lastly, I just wanted to wrap up. The reason the carriers are doing that, it's a profit center. Your responsibility is to know this stuff or partner with somebody like Rocket Shipping who does know this stuff. And you should be fighting every single reweigh reclass you get. Tune in to the YouTube channel. The next thing I'm going to talk about is going to be how to mitigate the risk and a simple framework for a root cause analysis to figure out why you're getting billing variances, how you can mitigate them, and the steps you can take to save money in 2022. Today, and in this video, I'm going to tell you what you need to be doing to mitigate your risk. I'm going to give you a simple framework. 3 steps. That's all it takes to mitigate at least 10% of these reweighs and reclasses that are just BS. Billing variance number 1 would be a reweigh. How do we figure that out? First thing you're going to do, you're going to get a scale at your warehouse. You're going to get it certified. You're going to have a company come in, local. You just Google search scales, calibration certificates. You have them come in. They certify and they calibrate it and they give you a certificate. Keep that on file, send it to your freight broker or to your freight rep or to your Rocket Shipping rep if you're working with us, which you should be. Send it over, make sure they have it on file. It's good for a year. I say 6 months. Do it every 6 months. Second thing you need to do to get rid of the reweighs or to mitigate your risk against them, take a picture of every pallet on the scale. Make sure that you can see that the pallet is on the scale and you can see the number clearly that says, here's how much it weighs. Third thing, take a picture of the tape measure next to the pallet while it's on the scale. Now, let's just say you ship the same item over and over and over. Then do this a few times from a few different angles and call it good and say, hey, this was this exact shipment. If you've got different items every time, and you've got the bill of lading already, put the bill of lading in the picture, take the picture of it on the scale with the weight clearly legible, with the ruler with the dimensions. And then when the carrier says, hey, buddy, we got a certificate saying that this is 100 pounds different, then you can just come back and say, here's my scale certificate, buddy, you're wrong. And you make sure that you've got a third party working with, carrier, sales rep, whatever it may be. You send it to him, you send him the picture, you send him everything at once, and you say, no, you're wrong. 80% of the time, they're going to drop it. 20% of the time, they're going to say, no, our certificate is better than yours. He said, she said. Then you need to get somebody involved that's an expert at this and who does disputes on a daily basis, like the team at Rocket Shipping or your other third party that you're working with. So those are the 3 steps on mitigating reweighs. Reclasses are going to be a bit different because they're more just based on their dimensionalizer. And here's the steps you can take there. First step is to measure the pallet, but we've already done that in the reweigh section, right? You measure the pallet with the tape measure, and you take a picture with the tape measure, clearly legible. Here's the dimensions of this bad boy. Second thing you do, don't have any overhang. If the pallet is 48 inches by 40 inches and your product in the middle bows out, that dimensionalizer takes a picture from up above. If you're in the freight industry, you know it, but I'll explain it. A dimensionalizer is basically just a camera with a yellow square on the ground on the concrete floor of the terminal. They put the pallet inside there, it takes a picture, and it says the exact dimensions from there. The carriers invested in these lots and lots of money because they said, hey, if we can prove these dimensions are wrong even by an inch and reclass it, I think we could probably move our revenues 1% to 2% per year. And so everybody adopted it. Paid off for the carriers big time. That's why you have to mitigate it. You have to work with a third party. You got to work with a trusted partner to be able to fight back. To recap that second step, you got to make sure that the packaging is not bowing out in the middle. So you got to have it clean. If it's a 48-inch pallet, you don't want to have it hanging off the other end by 2 inches. It all counts. Even if it's just the cardboard box that's open and it's hanging out over the edge, unless you've got pictures of it on your scale with your measurements, you're not going to be able to win that dispute against a reclass because they're going to show you a picture, hey, it's overhanging. So that's a 2-step framework for reclasses. The last part of reclasses is that, and not many people talk about this, if you get a reweigh, you should get a reclass too, a lot of times, because the density number, if it's just a reweigh and the dimensions are all the same, it's going to be heavier, which means your density is up, which means your price should go down. And there's always these positive variances in this industry, third-party brokers and carriers alike. They don't pass positive variances on. So that's the last thing I'm going to talk about in this video about billing variances that you did not see in the LinkedIn video, and that is transparency. If you're working with a broker, you're working direct, and you see that you get billing variances, and the only time you see them is when the charge is more than the original quote, then you're not working with the right partner. Here's what I mean by that. So I'll just take a step back there. I'll say it again. If you're only seeing billing variances that are more than the original quote, you're not working with the right freight partner. I'm not saying it happens as much as 25% or something as a billing discrepancy that's higher. There is every single week shipments that come through our system at Rocket Shipping where the carrier bills less, whether it was because they didn't bill for liftgate or they didn't bill for residential, whatever it may be. Almost all brokers take that as a win. And the only time that they should be doing that, and I'm not saying it's bad business, I'm saying if they're doing that, that means that they're absorbing your losses too. So there just isn't variances. But if you're taking losses, you should be asking your broker, what about the wins? You need to push your broker or your carrier sales rep. It's even worse in the carrier sales rep industry for like direct with a freight carrier because you're never gonna get a win on an invoice. They're only going to invoice you more. So that's the last thing I'll say on billing variances in this video. We'll go more in depth about how to mitigate, accessorial add-ons and things like that. But today's topics were really just reweighs, reclasses, how to mitigate those, the simple framework. Rewatch the video 3 times if you have to, but take that framework for reweighs, do it for reweighs the correct way. That'll set you up to do it the correct way for reclasses. And you should be able to save 10-15% on your shipping spend if you just do a quick audit and work with a trusted partner like Rocket Shipping. Have a great day, guys.